all right. How's everybody doing on this Saturday morning? It's currently 2:40 in the morning in the AM Texas time. It is April 11th, 2026. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. Well, the luxury of this podcast is I can do anything I want with different variations and different topics. Don't have to stick to true crime, and that's one of the reasons why I created that new intro because not everything has to deal with murder, bones, all that gory stuff. Tonight I want to talk about addiction. I want to talk about addicts because that's something that is really close to my heart. And it's difficult whenever you have a lack of understanding of social cues, when you don't have an understanding of living life on life's terms. You tell me, 12, all these topics seem like you're trying to teach something. Well, you know what? The channel is called Investigative. So we're deep diving, right? We're not just bullshitting on the surface level of these topics that are more important than the social interaction of people in the chat. Tonight I want to talk about socialization, and I'm going to put it up here on the screen if I can get this to work. This is a workbook that I had the pleasure of writing, and I had my own practice. And it said in the past, you may have had a memory of learning how other cultures interacted. In fact, you may have found yourself not interested in the topic at all. While the individuals were going through my program, they were given the opportunity to learn about themselves relating to others. In adult relationships, it's often a give and take. But in the life of the addict, it's also mostly just about the take. In this curriculum, you'll learn how it's not okay to just be a taker all the time. It is important to give back to self and others in society. To do this, you must learn how to socialize with other people in a positive way. And I believe this is part of the thing that we've stepped away from in society. Not just addicts, but people in general. I think we've all pretty much stepped away from this for whatever reason. Whatever reason, we have stepped away from the ability to be sociable with people, places, and things. It's almost like we've intertwined ourselves into a world where we're isolated, where the least amount of social interaction gives people instantaneous anxiety. The words such as introvert or extrovert, all of a sudden, our diagnosis is OCD, all these things. Or is it just an excuse not to be sociable? By understanding how to socialize with others, you learn how to form healthy relationships, manage your anger, and what effects your choices have on other people. And that's one of the things that I believe that people don't understand is what your choices have to do with how it affects others. Because Today in 2026, we're a very selfish culture. If it isn't something that you are getting from somebody else or something that is giving to you, as long as you give the pretense of mild attachment, then all of a sudden it's too much, troublesome. It interrupts your schedule, whatever it might be. You know, this this book that I've wrote, it talks about having a new way to learn to rid the past from either criminal activity to drug or alcohol use. Two things that are not popular topics, but you know what? We must talk about them because they intertwine with everybody in society today. You know, I always tell people having a crime free and substance free life will bring you freedom. But through that freedom, you must go through some hellish events, some hard work, some support, and of course, a plan of action. This next part, many people can't do this. Their pride is too big, it won't let them reach out for help. But in order to get better, you got to. You have to. Using my southern stuff down here, you got to. um, there's times and chances that you've hurt people who have attempted to assist you in changing. Chances they don't trust in you anymore. So with this situation being stated, you will need to work on rebuilding this relationship. There have been lots of years lost to tearing down the relationship. Now it's time to repair it with new tools. If those relationships are unrepairable, then there is a chance that you may have to sever the tie to this relationship that is unhealthy for you. You know, when I started in the field of, working as a therapist, there were two models that I don't know if they're used very much anymore. One was a hospital thinking model, and the other one was kind of like the criminal thinking model. One stated that if you change the behavior, you change the action, and you change the thinking. The criminal one, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, state that if you change the thinking, you will change the action, and you will change the behavior. And that's the one that I seem to focus on the most because if your thinking never changes and all you do is change your behavior, how's your behavior really going to change your thoughts? You can tell yourself, well, I'm doing something different, but I'm still thinking the same. How is that progressive? In this book, we're going to learn what you've done to others and how it's affected them. We will focus on patterns that were detrimental to coexisting with people, places, and things. When it comes to patterns, these are familiar walks of life for criminal minded individuals and addicts or unhealthy individuals. We will focus on the two types of thinking patterns. These are known as criminal thinking patterns and addictive thinking patterns. Criminal thinking patterns are based on irrational beliefs to state it's okay to violate the rights of others or their property. Some examples of this would be, I just found myself in a situation. I'd rather be doing time than to be straight like you. So I punched him because he had no right to look at me that way. When an individual has these two thinking patterns, criminal and addictive thinking is a permission statement that they give themselves to continue to keep using drugs or alcohol. despite the consequences to self or others. These two patterns overlap each other and oftentimes fuel the destructive outcomes and reinforce each other. The examples of addictive thinking patterns would be I can quit whenever I want. My problem isn't drinking, it's my wife nagging. Nothing ever works out. I deserve to get high. As we talk about criminality and addiction, they both have the same thinking patterns that eventually lead to behavior issues. There's that word behavior again. A person's behavior pattern will change based on the changes in our thinking pattern, just like I told you a while ago. When talking about the addictive and criminal thinking patterns you've developed, we must discuss how the thoughts influence all the thoughts you have and dominate your thinking. For most, this has caused problematic areas that have led to trouble. This isn't unchangeable, though. With a little hard work and, of course, having great support helps. A person needs to pay attention to what causes them to use alcohol and drugs or exhibit criminal behavior. If you're able to recognize what takes you to this, then you can possibly take action in your irrational behavior that could lead to relapse. And that's what this is all leading to, is the eventual understanding that relapse could and would occur if these things don't change. I hope you understand that because that's what we're talking about tonight. It's addiction. If you plan new ways to replace old behaviors with new and positive thinking, you can help in assisting you from potentially relapsing. There's some or most individuals have stories to tell. We all do. Ones that have been relived in our mind time and time again. With each repetitive time it's relived, the individual had the opportunity to replace the worn out story. The behaviors with new positive insight. So I ask you this, are you interested in positive change? Have you made a commitment to yourself for change to occur? That those two things are what's needed in order for you to get better sometimes. And, it starts with your past. Because how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? Where have I been? And many questions that are asked early on in sobriety or even in treatment. Where am I going? Everyone has a story to tell. You must first understand the past doesn't define you, but has holds on you to keep you from going forward if you have mental strongholds that keep playing themselves out. And if you don't understand the word mental stronghold, then look it up. Because here's an example for you. And this is generational. Let's say you were raised in a family where things were quote unquote normal. Or you were raised in a family where no one worked, no one paid the bills, or no one acted like they cared. What exact programming did this pass on to you? Your upbringing may have been worse than any story that you hear around you. But the truth is this, you're incarcerated on supervision now, so you're on the same spot. It is certain that you can change the past. Of course you can. First, you must make some changes in your thinking and behavior so you don't continue to have to be answering to someone or to be incarcerated. This is a reality. You don't change these things, you will continue to repeat the same thing and gain the same negative consequence. The good news is there is hope for you to change. hope for you to do something different. But to do these things, you must be invested and willing to do something different. You must make some changes in your thinking and behaviors to gain different actions. Let's talk about family upbringing. Because, like I said, how are you going to know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? And many people, unfortunately, only know where they've been. They don't know where they're going. Oftentimes it's said everyone is born into a family. Whether it's normal or not, we didn't get to choose what family we became part of. This is also the first recollection of being a part of a community or fitting in. Listen to that word right there because we're going to talk about it more as we go along in this workbook. A family is considered part of the community you're in right now. When it comes to a community, they all consist of strengths, weaknesses, goals, respect for each other's boundaries, and understand their roles in the family community. There is also a form of expectation of being a part of a community. One way this expectation is facilitated through open communication. If I was giving you little highlight points, fitting into a community and open communication in a community is essential. Because when the community is unhealthy, is when they have more weaknesses than strengths. So think about that as a family dynamic. Chaos is created when they do not have proper boundaries in place or even have common goals. Growing up in your family community, there might have been constant unclear rules or guidelines. Or there might not have been any rules or guidelines at all, or too strict and unbending. In this type of family, the members may not have been certain of their roles or expectations of them. There might have been some alienation and thus making it impossible for anyone to take any real responsibility or any type of initiative to be a part of functioning, healthy family or community. Don't get me wrong, and don't get the wrong idea. There's no family that is 100% functioning at all times. If you have a general understanding of your family's strengths and weaknesses, you will have an idea of how you became to be who you are. You'll be able to recognize your strengths, but most of the focus may be on the weaknesses in order for you to utilize the area achieving change. Here's another example. If you break your left arm, once you get to the emergency room, the doctor doesn't spend time working on the right one. Treatment is a lot like that scenario. You don't work on the things that are not broken or need attending to. So, this is going to be my new series, whether it be late night at 2 in the morning or late night at 8:30 p.m. I'm going to be going through this book, giving examples, giving therapeutic approach on how to get better, not only in your addictive cycle, but we're all criminals at heart. We all have those unhealthy thoughts. What makes us to be free is most of us don't act on them. So, I hope to see you again on the next episode. This is episode 1. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. Have a good night. Maestro, cue that music.